Professor Barry Schoub has dedicated his working life to the field of virology. Barry's vision led to the creation of the National Institute of Communicable Diseases, or NICD, a national body dealing with all major infectious diseases. His work shows his commitment to public health and specifically the field of vaccinations. In 2012, Barry received the Order of Mapungubwe, one of our country's highest honors, giving recognition to his invaluable contribution to the fight against infectious diseases. Barry has made an impact on the people of South Africa and the international community at large.
Virology is one of the specializations of medicine, which is a scientific discipline as well as a health-related discipline. So my first doctorate was in medicine. I specialized first with a master's degree after undergraduate, and then did an MD, a Doctor of Medicine, in virology. And then I practiced in virology for a while, not in the private sector, in the public sector, of course, in the academic sector. And then after a while I decided to do a DSc as well, a Doctor of Science, which really is a collection of scientific publications put together, and that gets you, it's a senior doctorate in science.
I think he had great vision. He was instrumental in the development of the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, which was kind of the start of the Public Health Institute for South Africa, putting together his own institute, National Institute for Virology, and the South African Institute for Medical Research's reference units, to bring them together and form a public health institute, or the start of one for South Africa.
The public service was really where I found a home, because I've actually never ever in my entire career been in the private sector. I've always been in the public sector. And the public sector is where one can expand one's research interests, presentation at conferences, teaching to undergraduate and postgraduate students. And I think that's where my interest lay in my career. We started researching in the mid-1980s in this country. And at that stage, in fact, HIV/AIDS was almost unknown in this country. The only cases that we did pick up were those in white gay males. Nothing in the African population. And the African population really started in 1991, 92. Then it took off very, very rapidly. And then I became the director of the first HIV/AIDS research unit in South Africa, which was sponsored by the Medical Research Council. So at that stage we were really looking just at the prevalence of HIV/AIDS. It wasn't the more deep science that we're doing now. Now in fact, the largest unit at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases is the HIV/AIDS unit. In those days, it was very small. We just had the diagnostic tests, and we just were looking for it.
It's a very difficult time for a director of a virology institute, where the government of the day and even the health minister were putting out these really outlandish, very destructive myths, really, and pseudoscience about, what HIV was about. And Barry, in an institute which is funded by and under the Department of Health, was in a very difficult position. And he really had to stand his ground and be true to what he knew and what he felt. And I think he did. But he weathered the storm, and he had a very good relationship with many of the people in the Ministry of Health, and they respected him. So I think overwhelmingly people respected Barry and his opinions, his science, and him as a person.
I think one of the most important character traits in developing this kind of field is the willingness to learn, to have the humility that somebody can teach you something, that you don't know it all, and to have a receptive mind that will absorb what is being taught, primarily by individuals, and secondarily by what's being published or what comes on the computer and so forth. So I think it's establishing relationships with people that have the experience, that have been there, and that can teach you something.
I think Barry was very true to what he believed, and he would not move away from that. He was a man of, he was very religious, he was highly respected in the community. He treated people well in the workplace, he respected them, he tried to find a middle path. So I think he was a mensch in every sense, and someone who made a great contribution work-wise, to his community, but still was very close to his family, his religion, and a very special person.
I am an observant Shomrei Shabbos, Shomrei Mitzvah Jew. So there is a challenge in the scientific realm and religion. So much so that in fact I'd say most of senior scientists are not religious. Many of them are atheists. And science does superficially pose a challenge to religious faith. So it was a special interest of mine to try and see how science and scientific truth and the whole environment of science can in fact not only be acceptable to religious faith, but in fact augment religious faith and strengthen religious faith. If you look at science and what science teaches us, it teaches us the physical dimensions of the world. Our religion teaches us the spiritual dimensions. And I think when one takes what's written in the scriptural texts on a literal basis, and only on a literal basis, without the commentaries, without the understanding, without the background, without the philosophy, one can superficially see clashes. The creation of the world in 6 days, the sequence of events in the creation, fitting all the animals into Noah's Ark, etc., 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 etc. Many, many kind of things like that. But I think if one kind of looks at the commentaries on those scripts, one can kind of find very profound truths and very profound messages, rather than looking at the very superficial meaning or superficial understanding of those texts. These correlations are maybe fairly new because science itself and contemporary science is relatively modern. So if you look at the more ancient commentaries, they didn't have the tools, they didn't have those kind of wherewithal to kind of do that integration. And yet nevertheless, many of our commentators in the Jewish field, the Rambam for example, the Ramban, and many, many others, have in fact, even though they didn't have those tools, were still able to very, very skillfully understand that the physical world and the spiritual world are not competing with each other, they're actually augmenting each other. I think what Derech Eretz means is behaving in a way that people can emulate, that you can talk to your Creator and be proud when you meet your Creator, when eventually we all meet our Creator, and kind of look back and saying that our relationship with our fellow man has been one which has been impeccable, which has been one of integrity, of morality, and that one has served one's fellow human being, whether they're Jewish or non-Jewish.